Morning, Pearsall Church family. It's the Testimony Tuesday. It's February 2nd. Crazy to think that it's already February. Feels like we just started. Here's my testimony, or at least part of it. It's always interesting trying to shorten down your life story to fit in a video, but I think this is what I came up with. I think this is what me and God came up with together anyways. If it's messed up, it's my fault, not his. I grew up in and out of church. I had a lot of Boy Scout merit badges where you sit through and talk with the pastor. I completed all the work, the workbooks and study pages to learn. I got confirmed. I lit the candles. I took communion, but I didn't know him. God didn't really affect my life outside of church. I mean, I enjoyed going, and I had friends in the church, and I knew the songs, but it didn't really change my lifestyle or my future. Divorce and remarriage led me to Pearsall, where I attended many different churches. Generally, we were the average Easter and Christmas Christians, and maybe a few times in between. When I entered high school, I met a girl whose parents were both pastors. Obviously, that means I had to go to church to be able to date her. I slept through a lot of services those years. I was that guy. During that time, I even went on a special youth retreat weekend, which was an emotional weekend, but even that didn't really change anything in my spirit. It wasn't until late in my senior year that I was scared into believing in God. I was scared into a relationship. And I don't recommend this for everybody. In fact, it doesn't usually work for most people. But if you've known me very long, I tend to be the exception of rules. I had the thought one night, if I die in my sleep, where would I wake up? And that question literally scared the hell out of me and started my spiritual growth. The path of my life was changed that night, alone in my room. I started reading the Bible that I was given by my now wife's dad when I went on that retreat weekend. I sat up and read that thing. I think I read it cover to cover in the next coming year. There was a lot of work to be done on me, but I got to church. I started going to that same church again. I got involved in the youth group, and I met with 3 adult men twice a week for lunch. This is what really showed me how to be a man of God. More than anything else, these guys showed me that being a man of God is worth it. We cooked breakfast for the Sunday school crowd. They taught me that service is a big part of being a Christian, that loving Christ by loving the church looks an awful lot like work. But even though I met with these men so often, I was still hiding things from them. Because it doesn't matter how close you are to people, you can still hide. But I wasn't hiding from God. God knew. God saw what I was doing, and He knew. I would go on to become the youth pastor at that church and on several committees in that church, and then lose all of that when my sins came to light. Because everything that is done in secret will eventually come to see the light of day. Looking back, I wasn't spiritually or even mentally mature enough to be leading. I was put in those positions before I should have been. If I had been honest with those people around me, they would have known, and I would have saved myself the embarrassment and headache of it all. But you see, God still knew where I was going. He knew who I was, and He went after me like I was that one lost sheep that wandered off, and He brought me back. There was some time of healing and growing, and Katie and I began to want more of God and dig deeper into His Word, and this led us to the First Assembly of God Church. I had known Pastor John through Pecoy, and he's just a hoot to be around at that point. And so I figured my wife Katie and my 18-month-old daughter and myself would be welcome there. Now, almost 12 years later, we call this place our church home. My point is that I messed up over and over and over, and God still stepped out. He brought back this lost sheep, and He brought me back to the fold. There's always more to my testimony. There's all the small stories that speak to what God can do. The things that tend to really impress people, but that I guess are just part of my life, is that I was almost completely deaf until I was 5 years old. I also had a terrible stutter, and I spent years in speech therapy after the hearing issue. I was a child of multiple divorces. I had been a youth pastor and had it all stripped away by my secret sin coming to light. I've come close to God and I've fallen away. I've wandered from church to church and never knew God. I've been on retreats and had feelings but never had an encounter. But I came to God under a still small voice in my bed one night. And now, as a part of my spiritual service to God, I speak, I sing, and I lead worship. And for a kid who grew up deaf and had stuttering problems, those kind of things just tend to still blow me away. But none of these things are possible without the unending, reckless love of God.